New Amsterdam becomes New York. The Indians were the original settlers of the area now called New York City. They named their favorite island Mannahatta, which means heavenly land. Years later, it would be known as Manhattan Island. European explorers knew of the island. They had sailed along the coast and sometimes had sailed into what is now known as New York Harbor. But none of the early explorers had actually set foot on the land until the arrival of Henry Hudson, an English explorer who sailed for the Dutch. In 1609, the Dutch East India Company hired Henry Hudson to find a shorter way to reach the Orient. Hudson had already made 2 unsuccessful attempts to sail northeast around Europe to the Orient. This time, however, he decided to go west. Crossing the Atlantic Ocean, Hudson arrived off the coast of North America. He sailed his little ship, the Half Moon, into the waters of the fine harbor and sent some of his crew ashore to explore the island the Indians called Mannahatta. Then Hudson sailed the Half Moon up the river that came to bear his name. Hudson did not discover a water route to the Orient, but his voyage gave the Dutch their claim to this region of the New World. The Dutch built a trading post on the island Hudson's men had explored. Colonists soon followed, and settlement of the Dutch colony of New Netherland began. In 1625, 4 Dutch ships arrived. They were named the Cow, the Pig, the Sheep, and the Horse, after the cargoes they carried. The Indians watched with amazement as the animals were unloaded, for they had never seen such creatures before. The next year, Peter Minuit was appointed to serve as governor of the colony. He decided to buy the island of Mannahatta from the Indians. He offered the Indian leaders a collection of such items as tools, knives, axes, cloth, and beads. These things were worth about 60 guilders. A guilder was the Dutch unit of money and was a full day's pay for the average Dutch laborer. The Indians accepted Peter Minuit's offer because the tools were far better than any they had ever seen. Also, they could not understand how anyone could own the land. To their way of thinking, people belonged to the land, not the other way around. This was how Mannahatta Island became Dutch property. The happy Dutch settlers named their island settlement New Amsterdam. About 20 years later, Peter Stuyvesant arrived as governor. Stuyvesant was an old soldier who had lost his leg in battle. He stomped around the settlement on his wooden leg, decorated with silver bands. What he saw was an untidy village of about 700 people. Cows, pigs, chicken, and geese roamed in the streets. Rubbish was everywhere. Stuyvesant took command right away. He ordered the rubbish carted away and the animals fenced in. Stuyvesant was a strict governor. He was not very popular, mostly because he made the people pay taxes and enacted laws they did not like. The people of New Amsterdam had many nicknames for Peter Stuyvesant, including Old Silvernails, perhaps because of the silver nails in his wooden leg. But Peter Stuyvesant earned the people's respect, for all could see that New Amsterdam had grown into a prosperous and peaceful Dutch town, the finest settlement in the entire Dutch colony of New Netherland. Things were not to remain peaceful, however. The English also claimed the area because it had been explored by John and Sebastian Cabot, father and son, whom the English had hired to sail for them. But for a long time the English did little to challenge the Dutch claim in the New World. They were too busy with their European wars. Gradually, though, the English had begun to dislike the idea of a thriving Dutch colony between the English colonies of Plymouth and Jamestown. In 1664, 4 English ships dropped anchor in the harbor and trained their guns on New Amsterdam. The English commander ordered Stuyvesant to surrender the colony. "Never will I surrender," Stuyvesant replied. The townspeople realized that they were untrained to fight the heavily armed soldiers and their deadly cannons. Finally, they forced a heartbroken Stuyvesant to surrender. King Charles II of England gave the colony to his brother James, Duke of York and Albany, and the town of New Amsterdam was renamed New York. For a brief time in 1673, the Dutch regained control of their beloved New Amsterdam, but their good fortune was short-lived. In Europe, Holland lost a war with England. The peace treaty that was signed officially gave New Netherland to England. the colony was renamed New York. A new charter which guaranteed to the Dutch settlers the rights of freedom of worship and trial by jury was given to the local officials. English rule had begun, but the Dutch had planted their colorful history and traditions in the New World. The Dutch continued to play an important part in the growing English colony of New York.